Good morning, good afternoon.
Hello.
How's it going?
Going great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm
Just
very-
starting my day because it's still morning here.
Yeah. And you woke up late,
Hmm.
kind of, in a way.
Yeah, kind of for me. I woke up at 5 and then I went back to sleep about 6:30 and I woke up at 8:30, so yeah.
Two
How's your
sleeps.
day going?
My day's going okay. I've been kind of sick since yesterday, so I'm like literally just been on my laptop in bed all day, which I like never do that. I'm usually at my desk, but I'm relaxing, recuperating, hydrating,
Great.
eating. Couldn't really eat yesterday, so catching up.
Oh, yes, I've got my water with me too.
Your emotional support water.
Yes, my emotional support water bottle.
And I'm very excited to be here with you.
Yes, well, thanks for coming as always. Um, we're going to discuss an article from the winter edition of the Radical Notion Journal that came out like what, 2.5, 2 weeks ago, maybe?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, you sent me something adjacent to this on Twitter, and
Uh
then
huh.
kind of went down a little rabbit hole and found this and read it and told you to read it, and you did.
I did, and now we're going to read it again.
Yeah, and you printed it out, which I think is so cool.
I know I never do that, but I did this time.
I was very impressed.
Yep. So, yes, hello, all the people. Oh my gosh. Vanera, Ice Goddess, you've got Turf Mail,
Lavender
Existential
Rose,
Gamer, Lavender Rose, Julie Stano,
Female Hysteria, great
Hysteria.
username.
No kidding. Hello, all. Yeah, so I guess we might as well get right in.
Sure.
Okay, let me share. Uh,
And by the way, this you put a link to this in the description,
no,
or
I
you can
didn't.
later.
I
This
will.
is a free publication. I guess they normally charge for their journal, but this was so important they felt that they made this available for free. So anybody can go read it. I mean, obviously, we're going to read it to you. So
Yeah.
there are other essays in this journal. This is the only one that I read. I read the little introduction editorial
Yep.
page too, which was pretty
Uh,
much along the same lines of this essay that we're going to read. So,
yeah. Turf Mail says Radical Notion is down to twice a year, if memory serves. There's a journal, well, not a journal, a publication, I guess, that I get called Rain and Thunder, and it's a radical feminist magazine, I guess.
cool.
And I think they do one quarterly. But yeah. Okay, so this article is by Rose Rickford. It is called Feminism and Femalism. We are not the same movement.
Yes.
All right. So let's
Spicy.
see here.
Off to a spicy start.
Yes, exactly. Well, we'll see if we agree, if we disagree, what we think is valid, what we don't. We'll see where we
Yeah.
get.
Could we start by saying like, because we have both read it. So like your overall impressions and things that we might like look for as we read it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, when I originally read this,
Yep.
I don't know a lot about what's going on over in the UK. I know that feminism is on our shores as well. Um, but I'm not like super, me and you are kind of doing our own thing
Yeah.
in this whole gender critical world. We're not really joined up with anybody. So
Right.
um, I thought this article was really interesting, and I feel like I can meet Rose Rickford maybe halfway to where she is.
Yep.
It goes pretty hard and pretty deep, and some of the things I think are a little like
Reaching.
unnecessarily reachy. Yes, exactly. Maybe unnecessarily harsh. there is like a little academic aspect to it too, where she's making some connections where I'm not really sure that there is any. I think she could be giving Kelly J a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but then I think a lot of her criticisms are also very valid. So
yeah, I felt a lot of the same. Like some of the criticisms that I read, I was like, well, I don't know if I agree with that. And other things I was like, yeah, I definitely think that's valid. So
do we know
yeah.
if Rose Rickford is, I think she is British, right?
I would assume if she's writing for a British journal.
Yeah.
University of York, editor
Okay.
of the Radical Notion. I mean, that doesn't mean she is British, but I would think.
Well, she's living there, I guess.
Yeah.
One way or the other. Okay.
All right, so I guess we can dive in and see what we find.
Yep.
It looks okay on the screen?
It looks okay to me. Anyone is welcome to chime in if it's too small or blurry or anything.
Okay. Alrighty. Anyone who is following the gender-critical movement even a little will have noticed a split in recent months. Much of the content of the argument has focused on political alliances and what they mean. Some are comfortable with, and in even positive favor of, reciprocal promotion and collaboration with ultra-conservative groups and actors. This has included, for example, collaboration with those who are against abortion, believe homosexuality is a sin, see lesbian families as inferior, believe that the US election was fixed, believe that feminism is to blame for male violence, and believe that white people are a persecuted demographic in Britain. Others, myself included, contend that it does not make political sense for feminists to engage in collective action with people who are working toward anti-feminist goals. As a result, we have articulated our disagreement and asserted a political boundary that excludes anti-feminist actors and action.
Yeah, and that's something that you and I have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I've made a couple videos about it.
Mm-hmm.
I really,
Unholy Alliance.
yeah, and I was on Casey's channel yesterday, and we talked about that a little there too. Of one reason that just came to me yesterday that I hadn't thought of before of why these political alliances are so bad is that, say someone were to be inspired to do violence against trans people, for example,
Yeah.
they're much more likely to get that inspiration from these ultra conservative,
Yeah.
exactly, right-wing type people.
Yes.
And if we're all lumped into the same thing,
right,
then we get associated with that. And that's how a lot, because they blame, like, quote unquote turf rhetoric or whatever for violence against trans people, when it's like clearly none of us, actually all of us, want pretty much the opposite. We want these people to be as safe and healthy and well-being as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
well, we get associated with being, like, people say radical feminists or TERFs are conservative all the time, and it's like, no, we might share a similar belief with some conservatives, but it's coming from two different places.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We have been heavily criticized for doing this. Many women have urged us to avoid infighting and keep our eye on the prize. The idea that this dispute constitutes infighting assumes that we are all in the same movement, and the idea of keeping our eye on the prize assumes we are all after the same prize. I want to think about whether this is true, and so disagreements about political alliances are matters of strategic difference, or whether the divisions are indicative of a deeper difference in political aim and analysis.
I think that's such a good point, and very well written too. It's like, and again, we have been on the receiving end of this infighting, which I think infighting is one of those magical words that is used to shut down, whatever you have to say and shut down the conversation. And her point that we're not all after the same prize. There are anti-feminists who are calling themselves gender critical.
Correct. Yep, definitely. I will not rehearse the historical details of the dispute here. To get a quick sense of what has been going on, I would recommend that you read Jean Hatchett's article, Men of the Far Right and the Women's Movement, and Jenny Harvey's blog post, Feminism and the Far Right, Let Women Speak, and watch Kelly J. Keene's video, Reboot of Entire Rant, Right Women Are Women. In the ongoing debate, I think there are three broad positions being taken. The first two are often taken by the same people as one another, who move between the two stances despite the fact that they contradict one another, examined below. The third is taken by feminists who reject alliances with the ultra-conservatives. So number one, House on Fire. This argument in favor of political alliances with anybody who supports a sex-based definition of woman on the basis that we are all working to the same end and it is an emergency. Confusion about the categories woman and man is an emergency situation, and a single-issue campaign is needed to fight for sex-based definitions. In order to win the fight for sex-based definitions, it makes sense to make common cause with anyone who understands that women are female and men are male. Furthermore, it is necessary to make common cause with anyone who understands this, because gender identity ideology has created a state of emergency, and we should work with anyone who is willing to help protect women and children from its harms. You can hear from a prominent UK proponent of this position on Keene's YouTube channel, where she claims the house is on fire and the children are inside, and that she will stand beside the devil himself if it means that one more child doesn't have her breasts removed. This position was also defended by Helen Joyce in her Unheard debate with Julie Bindel in December 2022.
Now, I would say that I do agree that in a sense it is an emergency situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this in the past that, like, I think even more important than bathrooms or locker rooms or even, trans medicine or any of those kinds of things is just the fundamental idea of how we as a society are going to understand reality, and whether we're going to just take people at their words to what their reality is, or we're going to live in a material, objective reality that we all share.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real emergency. But the, yes, Anung's comment here, the house is on fire. Don't think, put your blinkers on. Don't criticize the right-wing women promoting more power for their right-wing men. No thinking aloud. I agree. It's definitely, and what I really think Rose Rickford does really well in this article is kind of laying out the scene here.
Setting
the
scene.
Yeah. For people who aren't super familiar with this whole thing, which I wasn't super familiar with it. I know about these people, but I think she does a pretty objective, at least this stage of the article, she's pretty objective in laying out, why they're willing to do what they're doing, which is creating these alliances with anti-feminist, anti-woman, really, people. And let's be real, when she says, this is an argument in favor of political alliances with anybody who supports a sex-based definition of woman, that's like 90% of people.
Right.
It's only like a very, very small fringe of even Democrats or liberals or whatever is in the UK, who are really believing that woman is not a sex-based thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, liberal individualism. This is an argument that none of us are accountable to one another as members of a coherent movement working to any particular ends, and thus that one person chooses to do or say has no bearing on anyone else or on the direction of any wider movement. Every person acting against gender identity ideology is an independent entity. Individuals might work together at times when their interests coincide, but remain separate individuals, unconnected in any lasting or meaningful way. There is no movement, only people sometimes working together temporarily. People involved in resisting gender identity ideology should thus all make our own independent decisions on what to do and how to do it. We are not responsible for or accountable to one another. This is the position taken by Kathleen Stock in her piece on Guilt by Association, in which she argues that women should treat one another as adults who can make their minds up about whether or not to associate for what they judge to be strategic reasons. She exposes an underlying assumption that feminists have no responsibility or accountability to one another as a movement or sisterhood, and that any attempt to work collectively to determine the direction of our political action is an infringement on individual liberty.
What do you think of that? It's not feminism, right?
No, we need each other. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be not feminism.
Yes.
That's just libertarianism or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's individualism, libertarianism. Yeah. Liberal individualism. Yeah, I think feminism has to be coming from a place of class, right? Sex class, consciousness, and the intersections that fall within the sex class. So I'm not really on board with that.
Yeah. Mariana says individual actions have collective consequence.
Right.
Yeah. For sure.
Anung says there is an underlying agenda among the gender cons to destroy radical second wave feminism.
What is a gender con? Is that the people that we're talking about?
Yeah, gender criticals, I think. Gender conservatives, I think. Gender conservative women. Yeah. Okay, number 3, feminism. Feminists understand that resistance to gender identity ideology is part of a broad... Oh, I'm cat sitting, by the way. Sorry for the meows.
You'd never apologize for meows. That's value added.
Okay. Let's start again. Feminists understand that resistance to gender identity ideology is part of a broader feminist politics of women's liberation, and that alliances should be made on this basis. There are multiple reasons for opposing gender identity ideology, and not all of them are feminist. Some are based on, for example, moral disgust at gender nonconformity and a desire to enforce traditional gender roles for male and female people. These are fundamentally different and oppositional political aims to those of feminists. It therefore makes no sense to create political alliances with people who have those goals. This argument is made beautifully clear in Gia Milanovich's Vegan Wars analogy, in which she points out that vegans and the meat industry both need to know the difference between meat and plants, but that does not mean that the political goals of vegan campaigners are the same as those of the meat industry. Feminists are against political alliances with people who are working against women's political interests. These interests, and why they are antithetical to radical right politics, are explained in the next section.
Yeah, veganism provides us with endless analogies that are so useful in feminism.
Yeah.
Anang says a gender con is the equivalent of a neocon in terms of the gender critical movement. It's in all the paper newsletters for women of color. Interesting.
Thank you for that. Yes, cat. Meow.
Oh, okay. So Lavender Rose says gender cons want us to have the hit it and quit it mentality. Just get behind the most powerful right-wing men until we win and then stop talking about any feminist issues. Yeah, it just feels like that's not really thinking about the big picture.
Correct.
I just the idea of allying with someone like Tucker Carlson or whatever.
Unthinkable.
Unthinkable, yes.
Hello, Lee.
Hey, Lee.
All right. Of these 3 positions, only one, liberal individualism, is actually an argument that alliances and associations are not significant in political organizing. Liberal individualism asserts that political actors are totally unconnected individuals rather than members of a collective movement with collective responsibilities. I don't deal with this in detail here, but you can read about the ways in which such an understanding of human society is antithetical to feminist politics in Jane Clare Jones' pieces on page 54. I haven't put the link in the bio or the description yet, but I will, so you guys can find this. It's also theradicalnotion.org. Okay.
Yeah.
It is worth noting that in reality, people defending radical right associations often flip between the House on Fire and liberal individualist positions. It is common to see people argue one moment that associations are insignificant and irrelevant, and the next that particular associations are critically necessary for the purpose of putting out the fire. Helen Joyce, for example, relied on both of these arguments in her debate with Julie Bindel. These are contradictory positions, and arguing that associations don't matter and that they are politically necessary is incoherent. Nevertheless,
Really good point.
yeah, very much so. Nevertheless, I think it's important when challenging a position to present its clearest version. I therefore engage with House on Fire as a serious political strategy that is being used to defend certain tactics, and park for the time being the way in which it is often presented within disingenuous contradictory rhetoric.
I want to point out Expired Milk's comment: within 10 seconds of watching Walsh, you know exactly who he is, yet many GC types
Ugh.
worship him.
That disgusting tweet he had the other day that was like, men just want to come home from work to happy children and a grateful wife. That's all we want. And it's
Yes,
like,
there was an op-ed in the New York Times about that.
oh, really?
Yes, about that tweet or whatever.
Ugh.
Yeah. Oh my God, how freaking sexist can you get?
So gross.
Yeah, Existential says Matt Walsh is a turd, and I hate that he ever became the face of GC.
I know, he put out that documentary and it was like, now he's the poster boy. And it's like, wait, what? Women have been talking about this forever.
Yeah, Expired says a bunch of people agreeing that the sky is blue doesn't mean we gotta be friends for it.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. In contrast to liberal individualism, House on Fire proponents and feminists both understand that political alliances have an impact on the strength and direction of political movements. The disagreement between these two positions is not about the significance or otherwise of political alliances, but about whom those alliances should be made with and for what reason. Basically, both feminists and House on Fire people have our eyes on a political goal and make decisions about who to work with according to that goal. The disagreement about who to work with thus suggests that there is a difference in the content of our political goals and what we think will help to reach them. I want to consider the overall goals of House on Fire proponents and those of feminism, and think about how we might explain the difference of opinion regarding political alliances. The distinction of the House on Fire position from feminist politics has been identified by Kelly J. Keene, who is eager to dissociate herself and her organization standing for women from feminism. She has coined a new term for the politics she promotes, the politics of Femalism.
I think that previous sentence is really important. She's eager to disassociate herself
Mm-hmm.
and her organization from feminism.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you be eager to disassociate yourself from feminism when you have a whole organization that's supposedly about furthering women's rights?
Right, because she or those believers are not really interested in the benefits of feminism at all. They are content with housewifery and motherhood and the gender roles ascribed to them in patriarchy, but they just don't want men to be a part of that.
Right. And I made a video about that a couple weeks ago, the whole makeup thing and whatever, and like, but it's the bigger issue that like they have a conservative view of womanhood.
Right.
And they don't have a feminist view of womanhood, which is like the whole gender abolition idea, you know?
Uh-huh.
That they're just content with the boxes and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, yeah, and I think you don't really want to single anyone out. We're just
No.
speaking on what is in this article.
Yes.
But I have heard some of these women say specifically, I'm not a feminist. I don't care about feminism. I
Right.
think that a family should be a mother and father, and
Yes.
a mother has this role and a father has this role, and blah, blah, blah. So, like,
Sure. Again,
that's,
this is not to, we're doing this analysis of this article. It's not to single anybody out, but these are things we've personally heard or heard in our comments or whatever. We have heard from pretty conservative women who have these, pretty anti-feminist views of gender.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay. I don't remember where I left off here. Oh, the politics of, okay, yes. She's coined a new term for the politics she promotes, the politics of femalism. We start by looking in more detail at the political goals of feminism and the political goals of femalism, as I understand them from studying Keen's videos. We then go on to consider how the differences between these positions help to explain differences regarding political strategy and associations. Feminist goal: defense of women's political interests. Feminists aim to further women's sex class interests. These are the political interests of female people in our struggle against the material exploitation and psychic domination exerted on us by male power. They include, for example, freedom from rape and fear of rape, freedom from exploitation of our reproductive bodies and labor, and participation in a society in which women are understood as full human subjects rather than as the other of the default male. Crucially, these relate to matters that make material difference to women's lives in ways that enable us to flourish as human beings. Patriarchy is a system of material exploitation and psychic domination that prevents this flourishing, which is why feminism is a critique of and a movement against patriarchy. Women's sex class interests should not be confused with the disparate and often contradictory political opinions of individual women. Individual women can have patriarchy-supporting beliefs and take patriarchy-supporting action. For example, erosion of abortion rights is against women's sex class interests and remains so even if some of the people who want to prevent women from accessing abortions are themselves female. Feminists, as Andrea Dworkin famously argued, fight for liberation for all women, even women we don't like.
Yeah, that's hard sometimes.
It is, but it is necessary and real.
Yes.
Yep. This means we fight for liberation of all women from sex-based oppression, even those that are working against us in that struggle. Dworkin's argument rests on the position that, in order to fight for all women, we have to fight patriarchy. Jeez. This means that, although all women will benefit from feminism's victories, allowing anti-feminist women to influence the direction of the feminist movement will mean that we are no longer involved in a struggle against patriarchy, and thus no longer fighting for all women.
Yeah, I think that's the crux right there.
Yeah.
When you allow anti-feminist women in your movement who have anti-feminist goals, like including, there are women who are involved in this apparently who are anti-abortion.
Yeah. Could not be more opposed to feminist
right.
principles.
So they're fighting against the interests of all women.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Fighting for all women necessarily involves not organizing with those who are actively working against women's interests, even if those people are themselves female. Feminism is a particular political analysis, and action that supports and upholds patriarchy is not consistent with that analysis. Feminism is necessarily anti-patriarchy, and patriarchy-supporting positions cannot be part of feminist struggle.
Yeah. I want to just point, there's some good comments here.
I know, the chat is flying. I appreciate it so much, but I can't read and keep up with the chat.
No, I should be doing that more. I'm like reading along with you. Well, Anung says there are a lot of people who are beginning to become highly suspicious of the send me money model of the gender cons also.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are kind of critical about that ourselves.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat. You can keep reading.
Okay, no worries. Sex is not the only axis on which women are oppressed. There are two further axes of material oppression through which one class of people is exploited and dominated by another class of people. These are race and socioeconomic class. Black and brown women are oppressed along the axes of race and sex, and women who sell their labor for wages in order to survive are oppressed along the axis of class and sex. Many women are oppressed on all three. So, in order to resist oppression of all women, feminism needs to organize in ways that is conscious of all three axes and does not work against liberation on any of them. This is why feminism is necessarily anti-racist and critical of capitalism. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I've spoken a lot about capitalism on my channel.
Yeah, you and I are totally on the same page with that. And I actually joked with you because someone suggested to me, they said, oh, you got to make merch and you got to make t-shirts that say make feminism radical again. And I go, I'm not making merch.
No way. Please go to a local small business silk screen shop and make your own. But
yeah, but bust out a magic marker or something. Like,
I will never be selling you anything on this channel.
Correct.
Okay. Feminism is a movement to further women's sex class political interests. Its overall goal is an end to patriarchy. Its short-term goals are material improvements for women as a class. Examples of such material improvements for women in patriarchal societies include abortion rights, social and financial support for mothers, effective criminalization of rape, criminalization of sex buying, single-sex spaces for women who need them, and the right to be lesbian. These are all material goals that reduce the extent to which exploitation and domination systematically prevent women from flourishing. They are therefore in the political interests of women as a sex class. Okay, feminist goal, defense of womanhood. The term femalism was coined by Keene, who claims it is a term that can include all women. So does feminism, but okay. She states that all women are welcome within feminism, irrespective of their political view on any matter.
In practice, think the difference between feminism and feminism is that she's including the voices of all women, where feminism is including only the voices of feminist women, but it benefits all women.
Right, great point and differential there.
Yeah, that's the distinction.
Yeah. In practice, there does appear to be one political view that feminists must have, the view that the word woman should be reserved for female people only. This focus on femaleness is the basis for the term feminism. Beyond this focus, however, feminism has no particular stance on any issue, and all women can be feminists, irrespective of any of their other views. We focus on women in general, all women of all colors and all religions, and we focus on the fact that they are female, and as such, we have a shared experience, then that is going to be something that we can all work together, and it doesn't matter if the woman standing beside you doesn't agree with you on anything, or on everything, or just on some things. Those things don't matter.
So if you, Radical, were going to do some activism, and a woman approached you and said, let's do this activism together. And she said, by the way, I am a white supremacist. And I also believe the minimum wage should be even lower than it is. Right. And I believe that immigrants are the devil. What would you say? Would you say, let's do this feminist activism together?
I would say, no, thank you. Our views and beliefs and goals clearly do not align. Have a nice day.
Yes, I would say to her, do your thing, do your own activism the way you think. I will not platform your ideas ever, or nor do I expect a platform from you. I just don't think that any benefit you'd get from that would outweigh the watering down of feminism.
Right.
Thank you, Lee. I say this every time. Lee is the biggest supporter of this corner of gender critical.
She's lovely. Thank you. That's very wonderful. Here's the brand of feminism that centers itself on the liberation of all female people. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Feminism appears to be something that any woman can be involved in so long as she agrees with the basic fact that women are female. When clarifying the difference between feminism and femalism, Keene says, I want to take language and use language that men cannot have, and I just don't want those noisy arguments to interfere. The focus of feminism is on the words woman, girl, and female, and who can rightfully make claim to them. Although standing for women also claims to be defending women's rights, a claim inconsistent with the ethos of having no positions on anything.
I wrote LMAO next to that.
Right, fair point. It is not clear what rights in particular it defends. For example, in her video, What the #Feminism, Keene explicitly states that feminism includes pro-choice or pro-life positions.
I wrote vomit emoji next to that one. What is it? Then what is it?
Right.
When you're standing for nothing.
Yes, you'll fall for anything. As access to safe and legal abortion is a woman's rights issue, inclusion of anti-abortionist perspectives appears inconsistent with a claim to be defending women's rights.
It's very clownish.
Feminism is something that any woman can join in with, regardless of what material change she wants to see in the world. This is very different from feminism, which, as we have seen, seeks to change the world in ways that make women's lives materially better. Feminism has no position on making the lives of women and girls materially better. This is not its aim. Attempts to make the lives of women and girls materially worse, for example, by removing abortion rights, are just as welcome within feminism as attempts to improve the lives of women and girls.
Okay, so I'm going to take the counterpoint on this.
Okay.
Is that they are arguing against self-identification and, men and women's sports and men and women's spaces. And those things, will make women and girls' lives materially better.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I think she's maybe going a little bit too far there.
Okay. As feminism does not involve a commitment to material improvements for women and girls, there is a puzzle to solve as to what feminism is. Feminism, as we have seen, is a political movement, but a political movement needs to have shared political goals. Without these, it has no direction and thus cannot move. When we march with our sisters under a feminist banner, we are committed to fighting for material change in the world and to doing that together. Without shared political goals, standing under a banner together does not involve a commitment to collective action on any issue. It is simply a banner that a group of people identify with. In other words, it is a shared identity. For feminism, that identity is woman.
It's actually really interesting as you're reading that. I was thinking that feminism often, even within like leftist socialist circles, gets painted sometimes as identity politics. In other words, a type of movement or whatever that is there to actually distract from the worker struggle or the class struggle. And I'm almost thinking this is like even more of that, like the way she's describing it, that it's all about the identity. Like we think of the gender thing at like the TRA side as being identity politics.
Right.
But this is also kind of identity politics.
Oh, certainly
right?
it is.
Yeah. it's not about that core struggle of freeing women from oppression. It's about identifying what a woman is.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, it's like a fundamental question that we need to address as a society, but whatever. I think she'll get into it more as we go on. But yeah,
Okay.
just wanted to say that.
Whoops, going the wrong way here. Being feminist is a position on who can and cannot rightfully claim the identity woman. While from afar this might look similar to the gender-critical feminist position, it is actually profoundly different. Feminists have argued that being a woman is a material reality, and that being able to name that material reality is necessary for defending women's political interests. We have consistently stated that woman is not a gender identity, and thus that identifying as a woman is irrelevant to being one. Women are oppressed on the axis of sex, and men are oppressors on the axis of sex. How anybody from either group identifies does not alter this relationship.
Right.
This is the basis on which we have argued that sex, not gender identity, is the significant factor when working to end male domination of women. In contrast, feminism embraces woman as identity. Observers may note, for example, that over the last year or so, standing for women's merchandise has moved away from a focus on the definition of woman as adult human female and toward a simple assertion of the label woman.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
That is. I like-
Lavender Rose says the GC movement is creating little cults around certain personalities instead of thinking about how to form one big union of women acting for women's interest. That is something, it's certainly in your and my private conversation we rant about a lot. So tired of internet parasocial cults of personality. No sphere is safe. Yep.
Okay. Feminism's concern is with the language that people use to describe themselves, over and above the material reality of their lives. For feminists, having men use the term woman to describe themselves is, in and of itself, an existential threat. This is not the feminist critique, because feminism is clear that the word woman does not affect whether someone is a woman. Having men use... Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Having men use the term woman to describe themselves is inaccurate, and we may find it offensive, but it does not make them women, and it does not change the materiality of sex. Women's sex-based interests are therefore protected so long as sex is recognized in law and policy as a material reality that is not altered by claims of gender identity. Feminists have therefore focused on gender identity ideology and its effects on law, public policy, and sex-based spaces. Feminism, in contrast, considers trans identification in itself to be the threat. This shifts the focus from gender identity ideology and its political effects to trans-identified people in themselves.
Yeah, and trans-identified people are not per se the problem, a man calling himself a woman or wearing woman-coded clothing, who cares? As long as the law says these spaces are reserved for female people, and we as a society recognize that female has a definition, it doesn't really matter what woman is, right? In that sense.
Yeah. So there's a tweet from Posey Parker, Kelly J. Keene. No one talking about this issue who uses male people instead of men is putting anything perfectly. For feminists, the terms male people and men mean the same thing as one another when talking about adults. We are concerned with ensuring that rights, spaces, and policies intended to protect women and girls, aka female people, are reserved for those people, and that they are not removed from us for the benefit of men and boys, aka male people. Feminists, in contrast, are primarily concerned with the terminology used to refer to these groups of people. If our aim is defending the political interests of women as a sex class, the terms female people and woman are interchangeable, and when arguing with people who think woman is a gender identity, female people prevents them from twisting our claims. By asserting that they should not be used interchangeably, Keene seems to suggest that man and woman are meaningful identities in a way not captured by the terms male, female, people. The feminist priority is to defend women's sex-based interests. Language is a tool we use to do that. We choose what terms to use according to what will make our point most clearly to the audience we are addressing. This is why we sometimes say male people. It enables absolute clarity when addressing confused and captured policymakers and organizations. In contrast, feminism focuses on defending the terms woman and womanhood from trans-identifying males. Within this frame, womanhood comes to be seen as a territory under attack from an invading enemy who are trying to steal it from its rightful owners, and language becomes the battleground in and of itself, rather than the tool we use to defend women's material interests. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I want to rewind for a second there where she says feminists, in contrast, are primarily concerned with the terminology used to refer to these groups of people. Again, just to, speak on behalf of that side. Again, I don't know like a ton about them, but I don't think that's their primary concern. I think their primary concern is the men in spaces.
Right.
And so she might be a little bit overly stating some of this stuff. That's why I said at the beginning that I'm willing to meet her kind of halfway on this. I think that she does make a lot of good points and she lays out the landscape very well.
Yep.
But it's hard for me to, again, and I haven't followed it. She may be right. She may have watched a lot of Kelly J stuff. I haven't watched any of her stuff because, frankly, I don't really like her that much for reasons. But this idea that her primary thing is the terminology, like,
yeah, I don't know that I buy that.
Yeah, because I think, and when we have criticized, again, we really never talk about anyone by name, but when we've sort of criticized some people are like, well, she's doing a great, like she had 2,000 people at her rally or whatever. She's doing a great job of mobilizing people and getting the word out and spreading that and stuff. And then so we can overlook these kinds of things. And I think one thing that Rose Rickford does very well is saying these are actually fatal flaws. These are not like little things that can just be overlooked because she's becoming so popular or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, if they're getting things done with respect to the law and keeping men out of sports spaces, whatever, then I guess you do have to give some credit where credit is due, but
fair. Yep.
Yeah.
There's some chat here I want to highlight though.
Sure.
Lucifer says, I don't think we can divorce the term woman from women's material interests though. Like we have women's studies departments, women's marches, women's scholarships, etc. These institutions don't exist for females or birthing people or whatever term you want to use to pick out. That's a fair point.
Yeah, that's interesting, but yeah, I guess because it's just like up until extremely recently,
Very
woman
extremely
and female
recently.
has meant the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't even a question for anybody, like how to define woman.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a very recent phenomenon.
Oh, Lavender says it's important to watch all of KJK's videos and criticize her when she quotes Breitbart directly. So again, I haven't watched any of her videos. I'm sort of like know all of this stuff through third party.
Okay.
Stuff.
I haven't watched her in about 8 or 9 months probably, but before that I had.
Okay. I used to go to all of her live streams and chats probably 2 years ago or something like that, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when Ghost was her moderator. You know the whole story. I'm not going to go into it here, but my impression of her then was she did say some things that I thought were very good and very motivating. I shared one of her videos on Over It back in the day, and I was like, this is super motivating. And people on Over It were not really like big fans of her at the time. Because, she has put her face and her name out there, as have I, at a different scale, of course. And I respect like any woman who's willing to do that on this topic because, you know, to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find when I was watching her stuff, yeah, there was some motivating things. But then my big issue with her and why I stopped watching her streams was she was a ardent Trump supporter. And she does not, it became clear to me at that point that she does not have any kind of sophisticated knowledge of American politics or appreciation for American politics, like at all. And
Right.
there is
And as a
absolutely,
foreign person, that's somewhat understandable. But
yeah, exactly.
you
But
also
then
shouldn't be
you
putting your
shouldn't
nose in
be
stuff you don't.
telling, yeah, exactly. You shouldn't be telling women how to vote, right?
Yeah.
You know, I would never tell a woman in the UK how to vote or like who to support politically because I'm not tuned into it. And I know it's a little bit different because America's the world or whatever, and people are more clued into our politics than we are clued into anybody else's. But at the same time, yeah, that was what was most off-putting to me about her, was that she had this extremely pro-Trump stance where she was talking about him in every stream, saying women in America just have to bite the bullet and do it. And I was like, you do not understand because you have not lived the existential crisis that is experiencing a Trump presidency day in and day out.
Right.
Like literally an existential crisis on a day-to-day basis. And the other thing with her that I found very off-putting was like half of her streams were selling stuff, and it was literally indistinguishable from watching like the Home Shopping Network or something. Like the fact that she's holding up a mug and describing its virtues, you know, and I'm like, what does this have to do with feminism? She said she's raising money for to build a women's shelter, which I don't know if that ever got built, but that's what she claimed she was raising money for at the time. To me, it felt like a grift. So those are my opinions that will live here.
Yep.
And again, I haven't followed her in a long time, so I don't know if all I know is from things that I hear, like from this article that we're reading. So
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I feel much the same. You know that. So
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you and I have been very divorced from like drama, and oh my God, last thing that I want to do is engage with any kind of gender critical drama, please. Like,
yeah, you and I are an island.
Yes, we're a peaceful island, and we don't want anyone to come here and disturb that. But yeah, I mean, those are just my impressions of her from having watched her in the past.
Yeah.
And kind of stayed away from it. I mean, basically with any gender critical people on YouTube or wherever, I kind of supported them until, you know, I go into any of these things with like unconditional support.
Yep.
Until it becomes conditional because they do something that is so inexcusable, you know, and I'm willing to give people like many second chances because I know personally how hard this game is. And yes, thank you, Anang. Critique is not drama. Right. And these are just critiques. And I think, you know, Rose Rickford got a lot of crap for writing this too.
Certainly.
And these are critiques. And that's what actually any healthy movement does.
Yeah.
Is critiques. And it's not infighting. Rose Rickford makes the argument that it's not infighting because she says we're not even in the same fight. That's what makes it not infighting. But it's also not infighting, you know, and I have critiqued videos you've put out.
Oh, yes.
To your face. And you've critiqued things I've said.
Yes.
You know, and we do it to each other all the time. And honestly, it makes me stronger. I think it makes you stronger.
Of course.
And
absolutely,
it makes our friendship stronger.
Yep.
It makes our work that we do stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then of course, we've also encountered people who are completely not open to any critique at all. Yeah. And will take it as an excuse to fight or create drama or whatever.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So I think a healthy movement has room for that without trashing, without ostracizing people or attacking them or threatening them or anything like that, but to just go after, and I think that's what Rose Rickford's doing here. She's not going after Kelly J as a person. She's going after some of the ideas, some of the alliances she's made and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All
Off
right.
the soapbox.
No. Addressing the Standing for Women rally in Philadelphia, Keene stated, "These men are colonizing womanhood. This treats men claiming the identity woman as an invading force that must be resisted in order to retain the purity of the woman identity and reserve it for female people." While Keene is concerned with, for example, the protection of women's spaces, her focus on language assumes a direct causal relationship between men identifying as women and men being in women's spaces. This is a conflation of sex with gender identity, in which it is assumed that if men call themselves women, this will mean that they will have access to women-only spaces. This is the same logic used by gender identity activists when they argue that if men call themselves women, they should have access to women-only spaces. In both cases, it is assumed that women-only spaces are spaces for people who have a woman identity. The only difference is that feminism asserts that only female people can claim this identity, while gender identity ideology claims that anyone can. Both positions miss the point, which is that the reason men should not have access to women's spaces is because they are male. The fact is not changed by identity or language, because identity and language do not change people's sex.
What do you think about that?
I think it's kind of semantic-y, nitpicky.
Okay, we're on the same page because I agree. Yeah. And I agree, and this is another place where I would give Kelly J maybe more of the, a point there, because I just it's reachy, it's a little bit academic. It's like clearly what Kelly J and these people are saying is that these spaces only belong to female.
Yeah.
People. So
that's clearly her intention. And sometimes you might have to read between the lines for the intention, right?
Yes, exactly. And to say that that they're the same as TRAs and they're just approaching it from a different way, there is just that's a little and these points where we disagree with her, they kind of weaken this essay, because it's like she does make some really good points, but then she adds in this kind of stuff that is like kind of reachy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Feminism is an identitarian position with a concern on delineating who can and cannot rightfully make claim to the identity woman. This particular focus on identity often involves policing certain behaviors, styles, and language as being rightfully assigned on the basis of sex. For example, men using names usually coded for women or wearing clothes marketed at women is treated as a threat to women in and of itself. It has been given a term, woman face, a racist appropriation of the term blackface. Claiming that men wearing makeup is the same as men wearing a woman's face is to claim that women's faces are made of makeup.
In other
words, yeah, me too. In other words, it is a claim that wearing makeup is part of what it means to be a woman. This is to conflate sex with gender and to insist that the gender norms associated with the identity women are rightfully and exclusively the domain of female sex. This is gender conservatism, not gender criticism.
Yeah, I think that she scores some points there.
I agree. Yeah, I think Rose is right here.
That's very strong. Also, if you scroll up a little bit, that tweet where Kelly J says, "Men who have changed their name to a woman's name are no friend to women." And it's like, it's totally irrelevant. Like, who cares?
Totally
what your
irrelevant.
Name is? It's
names, names there's no such thing as a man's name or a woman's name.
Exactly.
In my opinion, there are names that are primarily used for one or the other, but that's the least of our worries.
Yeah.
So if a man wants to call himself Brittany, like, knock your socks off.
Yeah, and I will use that person's chosen name Always. There's no reason not to. I mean, sometimes I'll say like, Charlotte nay Charles Clymer or something like that, but basically I don't have a problem with that. I won't use the pronouns or whatever, but like, at this point, because I know we have a couple women of color, sorry if that's the wrong term here, the idea of woman face being a racist appropriation of blackface. Like, I would love to hear from some of the women. Lavender says you can only see that blackface and gender blackface are the same thing if you value women equally with men. Because I personally, that's something that I kind of I put question marks actually next to that point that Rose makes, because I'm not sure with the whole trans thing, because I know that trans and drag are basically two totally separate things. But and again, this is like, well, I'm white, right? So I don't know what my opinion counts for anything on this, but I would say that drag and blackface have a lot of similarities or overlaps.
As far as like using to mock and this is the wrong word, but entertain.
Yeah. Yes, entertaining based on
like minstrel shows versus drag.
Yeah, drag shows. Like, you're taking an oppressed class of people. You're
like highlighting, like making a mockery or an over exaggeration of
the most damaging stereotypes associated with that group, and
presenting it as performance and art and entertainment.
Right. Yeah. And and honestly, I think the reason, again, speaking as a white person, so whatever, but I do think the reason why blackface became so verboten and, like, you would never see it, right? And it used to be so normalized, is because it has a negative impact on men. Right? Because men are part of who is being insulted in that, versus drag. Nobody sees that as an issue at all, because women are the ones women of any color are the ones who are at the butt of that joke. And it's still okay to make fun of women. It's become less okay to make fun of men, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it. Anung says gender blackface, it equals blackface equals red face. If you believe like Audre Lorde, there is no hierarchy of oppression and all oppression is interconnected. And
then Lavender said ranking oppressions is a derailing tactic.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like I've been talking about that a lot lately, like the Oppression Olympics or whatever. And people, I had a couple conversations with Casey about J.K. Rowling, and common theme with that was people are like, she's rich, she shouldn't be able to talk, like only poor people should be able to talk about this or something. And there are all those tiers of oppression, and unless you're checking all the boxes, you're not even supposed to speak about any of this stuff. So yeah, I somewhat disagree with Rose that woman face is a racist appropriation, but maybe only in the context of actually comparing drag to blackface rather than this
than
trans where it's putting on makeup. I think she makes some very good points in that paragraph.
Yeah. Instead of sharing a vision about what would improve the world for women and girls, what proponents of feminism share is a joint commitment to the identity woman and a conviction that that identity should be reserved, sorry, I have to scroll up, for only female people. It thus makes sense that proponents of feminism should find common cause with anyone who agrees with this, regardless of their position on the material lives of women and girls. The particular alliances that have been cause for dispute between feminists and femalists have been those involving ultra-conservative groups and actors. I want to now consider what it is that leads feminists to join forces with these people in particular. The debates around these alliances have been couched in language of left and right. So first, we'll briefly consider what we mean by these and in what way they relate to feminism and femalism.
I have to just mute myself for like 1 minute and then I'll be back, okay? You can continue reading or do whatever.
Okay,
I'll be back in
continue.
1 minute. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So what is left? Feminism is a form of materialist class politics aimed at changing political, social, and economic structures so that they are no longer based on the appropriation and exploitation of women. The proper use of the term left wing denotes a commitment to materialist class politics. For those of us committed to sex class analysis, this is what we mean when we say we are necessarily left wing. However, in recent years, a different type of politics has infiltrated previously left wing discourses and institutions. Instead of focusing on the material interests of classes of people, this discourse has, like feminism, come to focus on identities. The concern is with who can and cannot identify in particular ways and what particular identities mean in terms of an individual's position in the world. Gender identity ideology and other forms of left-associated identitarianism are thus not actually left-wing politics at all, in the sense that they are not based in material class analysis. Speaking at Philia 2022 on the Women's Place UK panel, Pragna Patel said, "As feminists, we have to be the custodians of left politics. This is because feminism, as a material class analysis, is truly a left-wing critique of society in a way that gender identity ideology is not."
I'm back, by the way.
Hi.
Bye.
Femalism, in contrast, is a form of identitarianism aiming to demarcate an in-group, female people, from an out-group, males who identify as trans, with the in-group defending itself against infiltration by the out-group. Imagining woman as pure territory that is at risk of being damaged through contamination, feminism aims to build a fortress around the identity woman so that no man can get in and harm the territory. Inside the fortress is womanhood in its pure and true form, and the way to protect this is to exile those who would enter and pollute the identity. This same structure, taken by ultra right-wing identitarians' ideologies, including white nationalism and religious fundamentalism. Proponents of both of these have been involved or associated with women's activism in recent years. Let's look at what these ideologies are and, in particular, what they mean for women. White nationalism and the rape of the nation.
I think these next few ideas or broad concepts she brings up are just super interesting as far as I mean, again, they're kind of reachy and kind of academic and the connections I'm not sure are as strong as she thinks they are, but it explains the conservative view of womanhood really well. Whether this is actually the feminism view of womanhood or whatever.
Right.
This is definitely the conservative view of womanhood. It's all connected to all these things. So yeah.
Okay, white nationalism is based on imagining the nation as a sovereign territory that, in order to be safe and secure, must be securely bounded at its borders. Whatever is outside the nation is imagined as a threat to the welfare of what is inside. This requires imagining the inside as having some unique quality or character that makes it meaningfully different from what is outside, and thus that the protection of this quality or character is dependent on its purity from contamination by what is outside. A healthy nation is imagined as an impenetrable fortress. This imagining of national security as an impenetrability is often expressed using metaphors of rape. On July 22, 2011, Anders Behring Breivik killed 77 people in Norway. Before doing so, he published online a 1,518-page document entitled A European Declaration of Independence. Writing in The Guardian that year and in her thesis in 2016, Jones highlighted that Breivik's ideology was based on equating the well-being of Europe with sovereign boundedness. He saw Islam as an invading threat and was particularly concerned with rape of Christian and European women by Muslim men. Analyzing Breivik's manifesto, Jones explains, there are well over 150 references to rape scattered throughout the text, every one of which pertains to rape committed by Muslim men, mostly against Christian or Western women. For Breivik, rape was not a concern because of its devastating impact on the personhood of women. It was a concern because he understood it as an attack by a foreign contaminant on the sovereign territory of European men. His concern with rape was not that it was rape, but that Muslim men were penetrating the bodies of Christian and European women, and that this represented a penetration of the sovereignty of Christian European men.
I mean, I think it's really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you?
Yes. Very.
That ultimately it's about women as the property of men.
Exactly.
And that's the issue with any kind of invasion type thing of women, is that really you're offending men. It's not that women have any sovereignty or personhood of their own.
Right. Well, and think of like the common language about women being assaulted. It's like, that's someone's sister or mother or wife. She's not a person. She belongs to a man in some capacity.
Exactly. She only exists in relation to a man.
Yeah. Okay, an identical maneuver has been made by British white nationalists with respect to child sexual abuse perpetrated by gangs of men of Pakistani heritage in the north of England. Feminist journalist and campaigner Julie Bindel, plus other women, worked for many years to expose the abuse. Tommy Robinson, founder of the English Defence League, nearly caused a mistrial of the perpetrators when he involved himself, focusing on the fact that the perpetrators were Muslims of Pakistani heritage, rather than the fact that they were male pimps and child abusers. Robinson was not motivated by a concern with the trauma inflicted on girls and women, but with the invasion of Britain's sovereign security via the invasion of its women by brown men. For Robinson, girls and women are territory, not people, and his concern is with defending that territory so the British men can keep it for themselves.
Yeah, I think the spicy extension to that take is that the white men want to have the power to rape white women, and these non-white men are taking away their power of rape.
Lavender Rose says, gender cons think that there are good men who will protect them if they just put the right men in power. They're not in touch with material reality.
Correct.
Men believe rape is not bad because it violates women and girls and hurts them, but because some man's property was damaged.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Religious fundamentalism and virgin purity. Fundamentalist religion is based on imagining the world and people in terms of pure goodness and the threat of contaminating sin.
And this is really almost like the same exact thing as the last passage that you read.
Yeah.
You know, it's just taking it's parallel to it. Please go on.
Unlike class politics, which understands oppression in terms of the structural dominance of one class of people over another, religion individualizes societal problems by blaming them on the badness of individuals. Sexual violence, for example, is understood not in terms of male dominance, but in terms of the existence of exceptionally monstrous individuals who do bad things. An obvious example of this is child abuse within the Catholic Church. When forced to confront particular instances, the Church has treated them as cases of individual evil men, rather than a systematic culture of dominance and abuse of power. Thinking humans in terms of good or evil is based on the same type of purity politics as white nationalism. The logic goes that pure good exists and can be contaminated by evil. It is therefore necessary to protect good from evil by building and maintaining impregnable boundaries. Within this framing, women are either pure and untarnished or polluted irrecoverably. When penetrated, women's inherent purity is destroyed. Men are thus either our protectors or our invaders. This creates two categories of men: normal, nice family men on one hand, and perverts, pedophiles, and rapists on the other. The
And
latter
that's
are
what,
imagined. Go
sorry,
ahead.
that's what Lavender Rose was
Yep,
kind of
that's what she
saying in
just
the,
said.
yep.
The latter are imagined as other, and the former are charged with protecting women and children from their monstrous evil. The fact that most sexual violence is perpetrated by fathers, husbands, and intimate partners is an inconvenient truth to be ignored.
Yep.
Right. The protectors protect us not for our own well-being, but because contamination of women is contamination of men themselves through disease and of male offspring through pregnancy. This means that contamination of women is a threat to men's sovereign purity. This is the logic behind the separation of women into virgins and whores, and the moral impetus of women to maintain purity through protecting themselves from invasion by the wrong men. The hijab is a physical example of thinking women as territory in this way. The purpose of the hijab is to demarcate good women from bad women and to protect good women from contamination by bad men.
I wrote makeup too. Now that
Yep.
I'm on the kick of thinking of makeup as hijab.
Yep.
Thanks, Sheila Jeffries, for that.
Lavender said, I'm ahead of my time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You called that coming.
And then it says protectors control us.
Totally.
Yep.
Religious fundamentalism is a form of ideology based on protecting pure good from the external threat of evil. It individualizes systemic and structural oppression and places the onus for sexual violence on women to protect ourselves from invasion by badness. It also valorizes most men, who are imagined as protectors of women and children, and in doing so erases the large majority of male violence towards women and children that is perpetuated by family members. Imagining sexual violence as something committed by perverted others is an erasure of the reality that patriarchal culture is rape culture, and both rape and childhood sexual abuse are expressions of structural male dominance, which is why they are so prevalent.
Yeah. So the theme of that passage was super similar to the theme of the previous passage, basically the same.
Yep. Okay. Christian nationalism, bringing white nationalism and religious fundamentalism together. In recent years, fundamentalist Christianity has become a dominant force in the U.S. Republican Party. A movement known as Christian nationalism has gained momentum. This movement combines white nationalism with religious fundamentalism into an imagining of the USA as having a God-given superiority over the rest of the world that must be protected through borders. The superiority involves a particular set of fundamentalist Christian cultural practices and beliefs that include imagining both women and children as pure, perfect territory. Woman territory is to be defended through prevention of, for example, sex outside of marriage and interracial relationships, and children territory is to be protected from those who would infringe children's purity by educating them about, for example, abortion, contraception, and lesbian and gay relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Prominent Christian nationalist activists and organizations have argued for sex-based definitions of woman and man, and are an important instance of a political movement that feminists will not make common cause with, but House on Fire proponents and feminists will.
Yeah, so she's really tying it back there.
Yes. Why feminists are not Nazis. A reminder.
Great heading.
Yes. The notion of protecting purity from external contagion is core to the structure of identitarian ideologies, including white nationalism and religious fundamentalism. These types of politics make assertions about who is inside a given group and who is outside it, and treat people differently from one another on that basis. Where material class politics, for example feminism, set itself up in opposition to a system, patriarchy, identitarianism sets itself up in opposition to an actual group of human beings. Feminists who have resisted gender identity ideology have been persistently accused by TRAs of gatekeeping womanhood. For example, by framing our position as analogous to believing that Black women are not women. Apart from being obviously deeply racist, this mischaracterizes the feminist position as being to do with a concern about protecting some imagined version of womanhood as an identity and excluding people who are not deemed womanly enough from that category woman.
Hmm.
This, of course, was never the feminist argument. Our argument was that women are female people, and that defining us as anything else is based on patriarchal projection of womanhood. There is no magic woman essence or specific way of being, and thus, womanhood or being womanly are gender concepts that do not relate to the existence of actual female human beings. As Jones put it in her essay Unreasonable Ideas, whatever this fight is about, it's not about access to the font of womanhood, whatever that might be, and especially not if womanhood means white patriarchal femininity.
And I know you and I talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Her distinction of womanhood as being different from woman or female. Because I know both you and I just think womanhood just means the state of being a woman. So she's kind of separating womanhood out as more of an identity of or specific actions or something that's associated with being a woman or stereotypes or something. But yeah, and in fact, I wrote the essay about makeup and then I read this essay and then I filmed and produced or whatever that. And so I read this in the middle of that process. And I was like, geez, should I reevaluate my use of the word womanhood? Because I do use it in a couple instances there. And I'm like, I think that most people understand womanhood the way that we think of it, not the way that
the existence of the lived experience and existence of being a woman.
Yeah, just womanhood. It's just like adulthood or something, you know what I mean? It's just a state. It's not like she's kind of saying it's associated with this pure idea of woman or something. Yeah.
Feminism does not defend womanhood. Feminism defends women. Defending womanhood as an identity is exactly what TRAs accused us of doing and exactly what we were not doing. For example, for a long time, in our defense of single-sex spaces, feminists have maintained that there is no reason to believe that identifying as a woman makes a man any less likely to engage in male pattern violence. Women are systematically oppressed by men through violence and fears of violence, and have won and built some minor mitigations against this, such as female-only spaces. This is why it is important to maintain those spaces as female-only, and why male people should not be in them, irrespective of gender identity. The point of this analysis is that males who identify as women are a threat to women because they are men. However, feminism is not about asserting women's rights to set boundaries as an oppressed class. It is about building and maintenance of fortresses to keep out dangerous trans-identifying males. There is thus an increasing shift towards seeing men who wear clothes marketed at women as a particular threat on the basis of their gender nonconformity. There are, as we know, men who are sexually aroused by the idea of themselves as women. There are also men who wear clothes marketed at women because they like flowing fabrics or bright colors. Men specifically performing an eroticized projection of womanhood is dehumanizing and objectifying and not good for women.
We have talked about that much as well.
Yes.
That, gender bending or whatever is not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
But that's not to say that everyone should just stay in the box. It's
Correct.
just that in the state things are now, like say a man buying makeup and wearing makeup is going to be supporting an industry that's harmful to women.
Right.
So there's no way to gender bend in that way without harming women. So it's not that, men should be, more of the
able
women to be performing less gender.
Yep. Similarly, men watching porn, paying for sex, wolf whistling, groping, raping, and engaging in other dehumanizing and objectifying practices is not good for women. These are all part of the same phenomenon, male dominance. By targeting men in dresses as though they are the threat to women, feminism is in danger of eclipsing male dominance in favor of demonizing and othering particular individuals and of policing gender conformity. Feminism is engaged in a politics of othering, which is not about liberating women, but about demonizing trans-identifying people.
What do you think about that?
Feminism is engaged in a politics of othering, which is not about liberating women, but about demonizing trans-identifying people.
Because I think that some people said she's sort of like a trans apologist. You
In
know,
what way?
well, that she's saying,
She being Rose Rickford or KKK?
yes,
Rose,
Rose.
okay.
That she's kind of saying they're really not the issue, which I
Right.
kind of agree with. Like, she's right. The issue is the structural dominance of men over women, and this is just
Right.
one way in which they're asserting that.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. An individual trans-identifying person is not the largest problem we're facing.
No, and it's not always possible to be classy, but like I really do try to not ridicule or make fun or whatever these people, once in a while, yeah, sure, I comment on their appearance or something, but like more or less, like, and a lot of them act really clownish, and it's okay to quote them when they're saying like ridiculous things or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But, for many reasons, I just don't think that helps us or helps the cause at all to like, call them out as clowns.
Right.
But a lot of gender critical people do.
Right. Yeah, it should be about the structure and the system that we're living under, not an individual person. Again, class analysis.
Yeah. And making fun of people is,
It's not accomplishing anything.
yeah, it's actually just really shitty. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get that
no
it's sort of like a
need.
tension release or something, and what we do is so stressful, and once in a while you just gotta laugh at some ridiculous guy in lipstick or whatever. But
Right.
like, some people rely on that kind of as their main mode of activism,
Yeah.
and mainly when it comes to the trans people, I feel like really bad for them, because I don't think this ideology helps them, the majority of them.
No,
Besides
definitely
like
not.
Leah Thomas or something, who's winning
Ugh.
medals or whatever. But like the majority of them, it's really damaging, and they are not better off with it.
No.
So I have a lot of sympathy and empathy
In that
for
regard,
them.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of gender critical people kind of don't.
Totally.
Yeah. Not that I think that they're oppressed in the way that women are oppressed or anything like that.
Correct.
That's on an individual level. Like, taking hormones and stuff is really bad for your physical health.
Yeah.
So people got sucked into this idea that that's something they should be doing, and they're being duped or whatever to believe that is good for them. Yep. So, anyways.
Yep. Okay. The problem with the feminist perspective is demonstrated perfectly in Keen's suggestion that men with guns should guard women's toilets from infiltration.
I love this part, by the way. I just want to point out, Existential said, yeah, I actually don't like dunking on Tim or Tiff looks. It's like someone making fun of anorexics weights. I think that's a really good comparison, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, indifferent to the fact in such a scenario, the men most likely to be a threat to women would be the guards themselves. This position is basically, women are a pure territory that need to be defended from invasion. There are good protective men and bad invading other men. Only the other men matter when it comes to invasion of women. Anything the good men do does not count. For example, having the good men hanging around the women's toilets is no problem. The problem is therefore the existence of the other men, and if they can be kept out or destroyed, all will be well.
Yeah, I think this is actually, now that reading this a second time with you, is like she is really summing up a lot of the ideas she presented earlier.
Yep.
This idea of women as this pure territory,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of good men and bad men versus the idea that feminism looks at men structurally, the idea that all men have the potential to be violent, and that the way that society is structured is not to protect women from men at all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very good. I think that's very good.
Very good. Just like white nationalism and religious fundamentalism, this framing understands women as virgin territory to be protected, invaded. Whether by forcing themselves inside, for example, entering women's toilets against our will, or policing the fortress to maintain the purity of their women, guarding women's spaces, women are understood as sovereign territory, not as human beings.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Feminism's aim is to defend the sovereign territory of womanhood by erecting impenetrable boundaries against those who would invade it. Male guards in women's toilets is an illustrative example of dealing with a matter of class politics as though it is a matter of protecting an inner sanctum of purity against an invading threat. Woman must be protected, and those well placed to protect it are the strong men who will fight the invading forces in order to keep woman pure. Feminism as right-wing identitarianism. It is entirely logical that feminism should find common cause with white nationalists and religious fundamentalists, because feminism isn't just not feminism. It is anti-feminism.
Yeah, I wrote, boom, there goes the dynamite.
In asserting women's material sex class interests, feminism is and always will be in opposition to all forms of radical right identitarianism, which are designed to embed and uphold structures of domination through a politics of purity. Standing for women's comfort with Tucker Carlson, Hearts of Oak, Proud Boys, Matt Walsh, Sophie Corcoran, Tommy Robinson, and Andy Ngo, is not a matter of being willing to nosehold in the interest of pragmatic political gain. If this were the priority, the UK gender-critical movement would right now be firmly focused on making inroads into the Labour Party, as they are very likely to be the next government. On the contrary, standing for women finds a comfortable home with radical right actors because its core assumptions are the same. A political project based on enforcing a pure, untarnished image of woman is a project that positions women as a territory to be protected, like white nationalism, and as pure and untainted, like religious fundamentalism. For this reason, making common cause with white nationalists and Christian fundamentalists is consistent with feminism in a way it is not consistent with feminism. We are not the same movement. Feminism, like all radical right ideologies, sets out to dominate and eradicate the invading other. It sets itself in opposition to gender nonconforming people, treating the simple existence of such people as an existential threat that must be stamped out. Feminism's proponents are increasingly focused on, for example, sharing images of trans-identified males and claiming that they are perverts and a danger to women and children simply because they are wearing clothes marketed at women. Feminism sets out to end domination altogether. We need to be able to name sex as an axis of oppression in order to resist sex-based domination. When gains are made to further women's political interests, for example, single-sex spaces, all-women shortlists, maternity rights, we need to be clear about who these gains are intended to benefit, because otherwise they will lose their meaning and impact. Feminists are opposed to gender identity ideology because it erases... Oh, I lost my spot. Oh, no.
It erases women as a political category.
And that matters for feminist political work. We see objectification of women as harmful, and that includes men performing eroticized projections of womanhood. However, we do not believe that pronouns, clothing, or names alter whether someone should be considered a man or woman in law and policy, and thus we do not believe that that these are in and of themselves threats to women.
I don't think pronouns are a threat to women, but it is kind of like a threat to how we understand material reality.
Certainly, and it invokes that essay that I have read on my channel called Pronouns Are Rohypnol.
Yeah, and like clothing and names I really don't care about unless it's like, again, like with clothing or makeup or something where there's economically it's harmful to women. But yeah, pronouns, I don't know. I'm pretty hard and fast on that.
Me too. It is possible for a man to wear a dress without objectifying women and without demanding access to women's spaces. This is because women and dresses are not the same thing.
Yeah. Like women and makeup are not the same thing. You and I talk about that literally twice a day.
It is also possible and extremely common for men to objectify women and attack our boundaries without wearing dresses or calling themselves she.
Of course.
Male dominance is our target, not gender nonconformity. We do not attack groups of people, including people who identify as trans. We are concerned with women's actual material lives, which is why we focus our work on lobbying for single-sex spaces and female-centered services and ensuring sex is not replaced by gender identity in law and policy. We also work on a wide range of other issues affecting women's lives that are not directly related to gender identity ideology. The goals of femalism and feminism are thus fundamentally different. This is why we do not agree about who to work with. Our eyes are not on the same prize.
Hey, I want to just clap for you because you did a really great job of reading that. Thank you. Can everyone in the chat please clap for Radical Ramblings because you did an amazing job of reading that
Thank you.
article. And I wasn't sure we were going to get through the whole thing today.
I knew we would.
It took me an hour and a half to read it by myself.
An hour and a half to read it.
So it took us an hour and a half for you to read it and discuss it. So you did a really great job. Yes, thank you for the clap emojis.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. You're so... Smash that like button, y'all.
Yeah, so thanks for doing that with me. Thanks for everyone who's here. I think
we should chat a little bit.
So we should what?
Chat.
Of course.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Do you have final thoughts on the article?
Well, it's like when I first read it, I was like, damn, like she's making some points. This is straight fire. Like she's just going so hard. Why am I not this hardcore, Because I read it the same time I wrote that article or wrote that essay about makeup and gender critical women being like an own goal or whatever. And really we're talking about the same kind of thing, it's the same kind of people or whatever. These gender critical people who ultimately at the end of the day are conservative. Yeah. Obviously not every gender critical woman who wears makeup is conservative. And I did address that in the essay too. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for women who are wearing makeup because, a self-esteem issue or whatever circumstances of their job or things like that. But when it's conservative women who are sort of pushing this idea of conservative boundaries of gender, rather than the abolition of gender, which is really what feminism, we don't want to be limited by stereotypes, and then there are women who are saying stereotypes totally fine with me, as long as men aren't performing them.
Right. Yeah. These stereotypes are for women only.
Yeah. And so, yeah, when I first read it, I was like, this is amazing. And then like after a few days, I was like, well, I don't know. Like, again, some of the points are kind of reachy a little bit. And now just reading it again, like I do feel like, she sets up those kind of sidebar, almost academic ideas of the, like the white nationalism, the invasion of women as the sovereign territory belonging to men and stuff like that. And she really did a very good job of tying it back at the end to the actual, to the, ultimately, it's like you could just say it in a few words, right? Like, people like Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh are misogynists.
Yes.
In other
They're
words,
not
they
allies.
hate women. So you've got a group called Standing for Women, and you say, I'm standing up for all women, and I'm going to make some alliance with Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson, who literally hate women and want to see them back in the kitchen and actively talk about that on a regular basis.
Yeah, it does not compute.
Just because that, and here's the other thing. There are a lot of people on the left, because we read a lot of New York Times together, and the comments are not the comments always, I'm a liberal, but I disagree with this trans stuff.
Yep.
So there are a lot of people on the left who, if somehow we could mobilize them, we wouldn't have to turn to these anti-feminist, misogynist men who, at the end of the day, those men are not your friends.
No. Not at all.
Nung says she made good points, but she doesn't know enough about the YouTube stars to really see the problem.
Big sigh.
Well, and Minka has a great comment there. I wouldn't call most conservatives gender critical. Yeah. They're just trans critical. And I don't even know if trans critical is the white, did I say white? Is the right term for what they are either. Like trans critical, I don't know. They're just kind of like trans haters or something, which is not what we are.
Yeah, they're not even really critical of it. They're just like disgusted.
Right, exactly. Disgust, I think, is a very good word.
Because they're, and they're primarily disgusted with the males, right? Because they're stepping outside of masculinity into performing femininity, which is the grossest thing a man could ever do in a patriarchy.
Right. And whenever they do talk about TIFs, it's often, oh no, this young woman is ruining her health, so she won't be able to be a mother one day.
Have babies. She's going to sterilize herself. Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, okay, well, I agree that 14 and 15-year-olds are not in the mental space to make decisions about their future reproductive, whatever, life.
Yeah.
But it's not, I'm not coming from it like, oh, they're not going to be able to fulfill this mother destiny that they, So, yeah.
Sophia said they're not gender critical. They fight the trans because they want to uphold gender roles.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if, like, say this whole trans thing just like didn't exist, right? And it was just gender bending, like David Bowie or something. Are these the same people who would have had a problem with that?
Interesting.
Because there were definitely people who were like, "Oh, Boy George, wow, yeah, that's totally disgusting,"
Probably.
So would if you rewind 30, 40 years, would these be the same people?
Well, probably because like this says here, like they would associate that behavior with homosexuality.
I think Existential's point, there's a lot of homophobia wrapped up in this. And the fact that they look at, how about you as a lesbian? This is an extra layer of it, because like I'm not saying it doesn't, I am an ally. Okay, so it's not like it doesn't register to me, but there is an extra layer of disgust that people like Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh are like homophobic.
Oh, yes.
Type people, And Republican Party is not like, there are people who would love to see homosexuality outlawed, So making alliances with those people?
Yeah, Anang says we can build coalitions around a single issue while maintaining our integrity and refusing to be silent when gender cons make homophobic, racist, classist, right-wing statements. Comments.
Can we build those coalitions? So that's the
Well,
question, because that's just what those people are. And it's just like a fundamentally, you know? Yes, thank you, Lavender Rose. Totally agree.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cool to be openly homophobic anymore, but couching it in disgust for gender nonconforming people allows them to say what they want. To
Yeah.
them, trans is to homosexuality like vegan is to vegetarian.
That's a really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. Oh, yeah. So what Lavender Rose was saying, we need to reject the house on fire mode and stand our leftist ground. Like I've only been talking about this stuff for like 2 years or so, using my real life persona, because I was doing stuff anonymously for a while before that. But that's one thing that I have, in the tiny little platform we have or whatever.
Yeah.
I still believe in that integrity of approaching this exclusively from a leftist, and having a place, like we have a place where women can gather and look at this thing from a leftist perspective. And to be honest, like conservative people are really not welcome.
Right.
I mean, I can say that for myself. I don't want to speak on your behalf.
Well, yeah.
Sure, they're welcome to watch and absorb the content and stuff. And I guess,
yeah, but I'm not giving them a platform.
sure. I guess I would take like generic support in the form of comments or something like that. But I really don't, I haven't gotten that many conservatives in my comments like lately.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah, I think you and I have both experienced it over time somewhat.
Yep.
But basically, I just think it's so important to be firmly leftist.
Right. Well, and the thing is, I think that has dropped off too, because if they do stick around long enough, they realize that we are absolutely firmly in our leftist position,
Kind
in
of
our radical
hostile
feminist
to.
position.
Yeah.
And they realize, oh, I actually don't really have anything in common with these women other than the believing women are female for different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like a no compromise thing for both of us. And look, if that's something that we compromised on and made this more of a welcoming space to a wider range of people, we would get a bigger platform.
Yep.
And that's the trade-off or whatever. And there are reasons we haven't done that. And I think that's what was pretty much outlined in this essay, is the reasons to not do that. And I've talked about, my reasons for not doing it. I think it just weakens our movement on, it weakens it.
Yeah, I'm not going to sell out what I believe for a bigger platform.
Yeah, and
I could never do that.
Not at all to get into the makeup thing, because that's not what the stream is about. But that's the other thing that I've held really fast to is, and I won't go back on, I'm not going to put makeup on my face to do YouTube, even though it's a visual medium and I'm on camera and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, do I think that would help expand my audience? Like, probably. Sure. But I'm not going to do it. So I don't know. I'm willing to compromise a smaller audience for a more, for more, like a more
robust category of beliefs, I guess. Collection of beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ice Goddess says key to getting a bigger platform is be pro porn.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot. That's it. There's a lot of things that as feminists, we could start to make compromises on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we got liberal feminism, is they started compromising on things that would attract men. Look at Emma Watson, he for she, right? It's like, how can we make feminism so appealing to men that they'll start saying that they're feminists. Once it's appealing to men, it's not feminism anymore.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
right. That's right. It needs to consistently and continuously challenge the status quo of patriarchy. And once men start to concede that it's not such a big deal, then you're not doing it right anymore, because patriarchy still exists.
Yeah, exactly. Existential said, man, it would be a great April Fool's. I've actually thought about that, but I'm like, I would have to buy makeup, which I'm not going to do. Sure, it would be like really funny, you know. I don't know.
Why I'm not a feminist anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, I'm taking this channel in a different direction.
Watering down feminism is not an improvement.
No, and look at, you know, Kelly J. Again, not trying to drama and fight. I don't care, whatever. She has no awareness of us anyways.
Correct.
But she has like 70 or 80,000 subscribers or something like that. I checked a little while ago when I was reading this essay. And I'm like, damn, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Her persona and the way she presents herself is in a very sort of universally appealing to men. A lot of her audience is men. I know that one thing I will say is when I stopped watching her channel, another one of the things was that she started having moderators in her chat who were ultra conservatives, who were trad wife type people. I don't know. Again, this is like years ago, so I don't know where she's at right now, but that was a huge turnoff to me as a radical feminist. And there were other, you know, that's the thing too about some of these people. They're like taking money from radical feminists to do something that's not radical feminism or anything, not the opposite of it. And that's crazy to me too. It's we talked about this with Fiona Orlander. Like that's another one. Like, you know, someone who's literally TRA, who's raising money, and this is years ago. Again, like I've been so out of the loop, and I really don't care. I don't want to be in the loop. I want to be out of the loop. But like that was another thing, you know. This guy, for anyone who doesn't know, Fiona Orlander is a trans-identified male, and he got cozied up with gender critical and radical feminist women, and they gave him money for, it was like for his apartment and stuff. Like they were paying his rent and then like giving him money for to get his facial feminization surgery. Literally like the opposite of radical feminist, you know, like it's just so insane.
Yes. Well, and yeah, the whole taking people's money drives me nuts. We aren't changing any policy or enforcing any policy by having a mug in our cabinet, or a scarf or a t-shirt. Like, that it just feels so icky to me to have a whole store.
I agree. And
women to spend their money on for what? What's it doing?
We appreciate people who give us super chats and stuff, but we're never ever asking for it. You know, I thought about turning it off. I don't know. I have it on for now. I've never done Patreon or anything like that.
Oh.
To me, I said this in my stream with King Critical on my channel, but like, share our videos, share our stuff.
Yes.
That's the best way to support us, because what we care about, we don't care about making money. We don't care about you know, ego aggrandizement or whatever. We want to get the message out. The message is what's important. So if you have a woman in your life who you know this stuff will resonate with, share it. You know, that's what we care about. I do care about views to the extent that it means that more people are hearing this message, which is a very fringe message. And the messages that are getting big and drowning voices like us out are people who are pushing this traditional conservative gender stuff under the guise of feminism. You know? Yeah, I've shared people who are on over it. I really don't care. I know it's like I think people don't share my stuff on Over It. I don't know why, whatever. They think I hate Over It or something.
Yeah.
You know, if you can share the videos on there, that's a great way to get women, Spinster, Twitter, or whatever. Yes, Facebook.
Yeah, because the more women who hear or are exposed to these ideas, the more success women are going to have in like building the feminist movement, right? Like, Lee, I have to share my labor at work. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I will never ask for anyone's money here, ever. I will never sell you anything, ever.
Right.
I might ask you for a thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly.
A like,
or even,
or sharing.
you know, constructive criticisms,
Yes.
constructive critiques,
or challenging questions.
Those are great too. Comments. I mean, positive comments too are good. You know, that's kind of stuff is uplifting and motivating. Say like, hey, this opened my eyes on, you know, we get those, and that is just like amazing. But yeah, it's really like getting this stuff out in kind of a grassroots way or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I put so much work into my videos, and if anyone has any ideas how to make them better, or a topic that we could cover that you want to hear about, or something like that, like contribute in those ways. Stuff. I would much rather have that than money.
Yeah, me too. 100%. I'll always open to ideas of topics or suggestions of things to talk about or share.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And you and I are always talking all day long about like this, that, and the other. So,
yeah,
you know, if we see something good in the comments, we'll talk to each other about it and be like, oh my God, did you want to talk about this? Or what do you think about that? Or and then it eventually makes its way to a stream or a video.
Yeah. Lavender says women must lose their fear and intimidation of critiquing other women and learn how to do it constructively. And I would say Lavender has critiqued us and has had some critical comments. Certainly. But then she comes back with, you know, comments that are supportive, or you know, ideas we agree with. Look, we're not going to agree 100% of the time, and that's totally fine. And we have a few women like that who are like, occasionally they're really challenging us, then they come back and they're like, what, really agreeing with us. And it's like a little perplexing, but to me, sometimes I'm like, wow, I really respect those women actually, because they're here and we can totally disagree and they'll stick around. You know, like
constructively critical, they'll be challenging, and then they'll, like you said, stick around regardless. And it's very appreciative. And we can't grow or get better or whatever without being challenged. If everyone agrees with you all the time, then it doesn't inspire you to think deeper about something.
Absolutely. When I came to r/gender critical, I still believed that porn was empowering to women. I still believed makeup was empowering to women. I believed all that stuff was choices. And it was through women there, like, gently pushing me. You know, we have to push each other.
Same. I shared my video, Baby's First Radical Feminism, about the first day that it clicked for me. And the woman who I was interacting with was incredibly gentle and supportive of me.
Yes.
So,
and I think it's something that you and I are learning to do and to be that, because I know it's like,
sometimes I just want to be like, ah.
Exactly.
But
I know.
That doesn't help anyone.
It can be frustrating, but yeah, the more compassion you can extend, I think it really, really helps, you know.
What about this question? Would you trust someone who agrees with everything you say? Well, I'll be upfront and say even Lisa and I do not agree with everything each other says.
Of course.
But we have a very deep trust for one another. Yes. And so, people don't need to agree with everything I say.
Yeah, you challenged me and I challenge you sometimes. So yeah. Yeah, as far as trusting someone who agrees, I mean, we've, without going too much into it, you know, we have probably both encountered people who, you know, seem like super fans or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then just go in the totally other direction, you know? So yeah, someone who is really, that's not necessarily a good thing, you know? I read, what I really like, someone who's really engaging with the material, whatever they have to say about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Totally.
Thoughtful, but even okay, so I did the stream with Casey on Friday,
Uh-huh.
and there were some really constructive critiques about it, because I'm going to have him on my channel again, probably in a couple weeks. And then there was some not constructive stuff, you know what I mean? And the constructive critiques will totally change the way that I approach it next time, you know? But
Mm-hmm.
the others, sometimes I get comments that just make me like not want to do this at all, you know, knowing how
Yeah,
much
there's no
work
need to
it
be
is.
nasty,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
is like, unfortunately, that is a disgusting part of being on the internet, is there's always
yes,
going to be someone who is just uh drunk with their power of anonymity to be totally reprehensible.
yes, exactly. I want to point out Lavender's comment. It's not about liking or disliking KJK. It's about being able to call her out when she says things that are offensive to people of color and leftist women. No one should be immune from critique. Yeah,
Totally.
and I think when we have talked, you know, we haven't really talked about her by name or anything, but
No,
you know,
never
people
till
know
today.
that that's who we're talking about or whatever. That they'll say, well, she's just doing so much and she's getting so much done. We can overlook like some of the hurtful things that she's facilitating. Like what I've heard, that one of her rallies, there was a neo-Nazi person who came up to the mic and spoke their piece, you know?
Right.
That's the kind of people that there's just no reason to platform people like that, or, you know, you have to have some threshold. Um, and so, yeah, exactly. I think, you know, just being able to criticize people, and it's not hate. And
No.
I think we can up to appreciate the platform that she's built. And if it's, I don't know what material things she's accomplished,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, not overlook the things that make it problematic, you know?
Correct. Of course. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and also understand why she has been able to build the platform that she has, and realize that it's not because she's appealing, it's because she's appealing to an audience that's outside of feminism, which includes
Mm-hmm.
anti-feminism.
Yeah.
So what percentage of her audience is, you know, what did I say to, oh my God, what did I say to you? I said, if I wanted to get more views on my videos, I would just take my shirt off.
Right. Yeah, that was earlier today.
It's like, maybe the size of your audience is not everything,
Correct. Absolutely.
because there's a way to do this work with integrity and a way to do it just to get popular
Mm-hmm.
and make money. Because ultimately,
Right.
at the end of the
And
day, if you're doing 30 minutes of QVC every day on your channel, you're making money.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Dana says size matters when it comes to voting and politics, though. I don't disagree.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm reading this book, and
Right.
I'll send it to you when I'm done if you want. But so far, I'm pretty disappointed about it. It's very, very liberal feminist, even though the book is Abolition Feminism Now, about prison abolition. And it's written by 3 Black radical feminists from the 1970s, and 1 white radical feminist, I think. Or I don't know, they're all like queer, whatever.
Yeah, when they say radical feminists, they don't mean it like we mean it. They mean they're radically left feminists, is
But
what they
how can
mean.
you be radically left and be this like to me, the neoliberalism or whatever. Well, actually, they are like super anti-capitalist. So I guess that's what you're saying. Like they're radically left in that way. But I forget my point in bringing that up. I don't remember.
You're reading the book.
Yeah, I had a point I was gonna make.
It'll come to you once we sign off. You'll be like, oh yeah.
I just want to say Existential's comment about King Critical, like, yeah, he's like a good guy. Whatever. I know your channel is male free, so women can always come here for that.
Yes, there will never ever be a man on my channel ever in any capacity for any reason.
Good. I love your purity on that. And when I think there's something valuable a man can contribute to my channel, then I'll have them on. That's all.
Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, I wish I remembered what I was going to say about
I'm
the
sorry.
book. No, it's okay.
I don't remember what you were gonna.
No, I don't know. Well, I can tell you so far.
Was it in something around this, and then you started to talk about it?
Oh yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yes. No. Well, one thing with the book is it is written in the. I sent you a passage from it, but like the most
gobbledy academic.
And even someone said that about the Rose Rickford thing. They were like, this isn't in prole language or whatever. And I think Rose is actually pretty clear, but I get that too. Like, to me, and when I do my videos and stuff, I'm always like, talk like Donald Trump, because like, even though he sucks, obviously, like he talks in, short sentences, small words, like there's no confusion about what he's talking about. You know what I mean? And you can capture a much wider audience that way. That's one way to capture a wider audience. And like this book that I'm reading, and I sent you that passage from it. It's like, it's that really academic, totally opaque language. And also they say stuff about, oh my gosh, I'll send you another quote later, but like just how like white people don't get it and stuff. And I'm like, man, no wonder their movement is microscopic. They're presenting it in the most incomprehensible, inhospitable way possible. So that's kind of like the other extreme. I don't want, it's in a way like a good reminder if we want to grow our community or whatever, which I do. I think that you do too. Get the ideas out there anyways. That it's a good reminder that you have to make it somewhat approachable to capture the people on the margin. Maybe not to capture conservative men,
right,
but to make it accessible to more women. Anyways, yeah, that was the point about that.
Yeah. Let's see here. Anung says she doesn't think that Rickford was all that direct or clear, and that she lacks a class and race analysis.
I mean, she kind of mentioned class and race analysis in a few points, and she does talk about the fact that how kind of white nationalism and stuff relates to this feminist view of womanhood or whatever. But maybe that wasn't the purpose of this essay too, It was only like a 10-page essay. I don't know.
Rickford did succeed in pinpointing that women's conservative mindset. At least it rang true to me as someone with conservative relatives. But yeah, it wasn't super deep.
Yeah. How are you able to like you're doing it right now? How are you chatting and talking to me at the same time? I never understood how you were able to do that.
I'm not going very in depth. I'm just trying my best.
Oh man, Radfem Black. I used to be friends with her. I haven't talked to her in a long time.
I used to chit chat with her a little bit.
Yeah, she and I used to chat in private.
Yeah, same.
On GChat.
On what?
like Google chat.
Oh, I used to just talk to her in the Instagram DMs, but then I deleted my Instagram account, so that ended.
Yeah. But then the last conversation I had with her, she was like, you're so off base with saying that women's bodies are a source of torture or whatever. Which I feel like I've backed off from that a little bit, but she's like, you should celebrate your period every month. I'm like, no. Sorry, I can't go there with you.
That's fair.
I mean, I made a whole video about her and like defending her and stuff, because when I was on Over It, she was like one of the other women who was like consistently defending me and, you know, always coming in with like very radical, very based takes, you know.
I have a video on my channel that's sharing a piece of her work or her writing. Yep.
Yeah. And she's super young too.
Very, which I didn't know until recently. I was surprised.
Yeah. But you know what's interesting? It's like I have such a strong connection with you, and our friendship is very deep, I would say, at this point. But it's like, you know, I wish I had more people like you, but I'm very content having you.
Oh, thanks.
It's not like I need more of you, but like I've tried so many times to reach out to women and like, I don't know, make connections and stuff. And
I have been so lucky because like I have Rusty, obviously.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And my other best friend T, who's been on my channel too. I've been so lucky in that I came to radical feminism in 2013, and then that was right around the time that I met T and Rusty.
Yeah.
And so T and I kind of got to grow into it together because she was in a more of a queer headspace, and like one day I was just like, enough of this. We have to get somewhere. and she became very radical, and she's brilliant. And then same with Rusty. I've been very lucky in that she was also a radical feminist before we became friends. So I've been so blessed in that regard to have those two.
Yeah.
And then now you.
I know. I love our friendship.
Me too.
I don't know why it's like I haven't connected with. I think one thing is you and I are kind of like on an even playing field, meaning that we're both creators and we're on this side of things, you know. It is kind of somewhat harder to connect with women who won't like meet us over here, you know.
What do you mean? Meet us over here?
Like who won't come out with their voice.
Oh yeah. I see.
Yeah. And that's not to criticize any woman who doesn't. I know there's lots of reasons for it.
Sure, yeah.
And of course we appreciate everyone who's adjacent to us, but it's like I would like to make some stronger connections, and it's, you know, you and I have been kind of like a lone wolf pack of two as far as gender critical creators on YouTube, you know, because there's just so much of gender critical content on YouTube that we just like do not vibe with at all. And it's kind of, for me, it's been kind of easier to like isolate. But
I used to watch and subscribe to like every single
me too,
or gender critical or trans critical
absolutely
thing I could possibly get my hands on. But as I've gotten a little bit older and more deeper into my own perspective of what radical feminism is, I have unsubscribed to like 80% because it just doesn't vibe with me anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, Nung says, I'm very concerned that all the GC content is shifting to the political right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's the thing. There aren't really a lot of other people making the kind of, well, I discovered Sekhmet Chiao. I've only still watched one of her videos, but it was very good. I have ADHD, so it's very hard for me to like watch an hour and 40-minute long video. You know, but you know, I know there's other women out there like us. Well, Black Obsidian is another one. but then she said she's not going to make any more. She still does her community posts, but
right.
That like, and again, those, at least with Black Obsidian, do I agree with every single thing she says? No, but like overall, I think she's just super cool. And anyways, we've been going for a really long time, so
yeah, we can totally wrap up.
Okay.
I need to eat lunch and stuff.
Cool.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fantastic. You did a brilliant job of reading. I mean, I'm always so impressed with your reading skills.
Well, thanks. I'm happy to do it.
Beautiful
I like to
voice, and
thank you.
yeah, I that was very, very interesting. Very worth a stream.
The deep
dive. And Existential says, listen to Sekhmet. I don't listen to anybody fast. I used to listen to my audiobooks fast.
Yeah, I don't listen on an increased speed ever, which I'm always baffled when people do. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's so, oh my God. Like, speaking of ADHD, I feel like that would just make it so much worse in a way. So our plan is to also do a daytime stream on my channel on Wednesday, because I just straight up didn't have time to make a video this week.
Right.
So
and I happen to be off work. So
yay! In lieu of a video on Wednesday on my channel, we're going to live stream, but we don't have a topic yet.
No, we don't. So the floor is open for anyone who has a topic.
Yeah, maybe I'll make a community post and ask what people want to talk about, if there's any articles or anything, or we could just do a hangout chat. I don't care. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, for your wonderful comments. I'm so sorry we weren't super engaged in the chat as we were reading, but the chat was flying, so I could not keep up. I'm excited to go back and reread everyone's chat when this is over.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a wonderful day. It's a holiday here in Canada, so if you're in Canada, enjoy your holiday. Oh, what day is it there?
President's Day. What is it there?
Family Day.
Okay. Nice. That's a good holiday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go and eat some lunch and try to enjoy the rest of my day off.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, all. Thank you. Bye.